Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Yeah.
Hi, Mindy.
Good morning. How are you, Nick?
I am good.
What a nice surprise. I didn't know I'd get to see your smiling face.
I start these things at least, and then I kind of like walk away unless I'm supposed to be super interactive, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, when you said you were off early this week and next week, I didn't know when that meant. So I was like, oh, cool.
Tomorrow I'm not in, and then I'll be, and then we have
Monday.
We had President's Day, which I was like so surprised. I didn't even know that we had President's Day off. I was like, oh my gosh, really? Yeah. So it's crazy. It's just a crazy week.
Yep. It's always busy though. I'll be honest. I'm working as much or more now than I did when I was in the field, because now all my drive time, I'm on Zoom.
Yep.
Every day, all day. Don't get off my butt.
It's true.
It's really hard, actually. I mean, I had to get new glasses so that I could see a laptop because I'm used to working off my phone, right?
Yeah.
I had to get a laptop because I only used my phone and a tablet, my personal tablet. I didn't need anything else in the field because it's me giving presentations, right? So I had to get a laptop so I could share my screen. I have the AB38 ready to go with the home hardening form.
Oh, cool.
So I can show that real fast. And then I sent you, we just got a brand new 5 slides that I sent you for the office meeting next week, which really helps clarify. I'm getting so many questions constantly on, you know, what do I have to do with this new AB38? And it's like, nothing, get your report early.
Yeah, you don't have to do a whole lot.
You don't have to do anything. You give them a form, they fill it out. People are calling me, oh, they don't know how to fill it out. They don't know what the answers are. It's like, it's okay. Fill out what they can and that's it. This lady started arguing with me. Well, I need to help them and fill it out. I'm like, oh my God, no, you don't. And now people want to see what maps do I have that show the very high fire severity zone. No, that's why you have a report for the property, you know? We're not blanketing, you know, this side of the hill or whatever. It's just really interesting. So anyway, good to see you. And hi, everybody.
Good morning.
So good to see everybody.
Hello.
Hi, how are you, Kobe?
Hi, great, thank you.
That's a good color on you.
Tuesday.
Thank you for joining us. Hi, Keith.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Tuesday, yeah.
Keith, how are you guys doing?
Hanging in there.
So Nikki, are you on twice or is it your kitty on one and you're on the other?
My my sound is on my phone, and then I share my screen.
Oh, good.
On
I'm
my
not the only
computer.
one who has issues. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't need to put.
Technology, you gotta love it when it works. And I was almost having a tantrum when Zoom started and I was learning how to use it. The first time I showed my NHD screen, I couldn't get back and I lost everybody. And I turned into like a 5-year-old having a hissy fit, like, oh my God, I'm the teacher. And I deleted everybody and myself and I had to get back on. I was so embarrassed. And I just realized we're all in the learning curve, you know? It's just, it's the way it is. So I'm not a techie girl. I'm an artsy fartsy girl. So, you know, challenging at times, right? But oh well, it's okay. This is the next best thing to being there. So I guess it's all good.
Yeah, we'll muddle through somehow.
I know when I realize that I will be locked in my house, unable to go visit any of my offices and stuff, it'll be a year in 1 month. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. But I hope everybody's staying safe and protected. And hopefully we'll all be vaccinated.
I think we've all gone through the crazy already, so I think we're all good at this point.
I don't know. I know 2 people who died last week.
Well, yeah.
And one of them was an agent, 55 years old, super healthy, got sick, died. His wife lived. They were both in the hospital together.
Wow.
So you know what? I know you want to say it's better, but until it really is, when we can go out, I guess we'll have to just do this.
We'll have to do this for now.
Do this for now. Yep.
All right. Well, it's a few minutes after the hour, and it looks like we still have people joining. So I'm going to watch the participants just for a minute longer. But why don't we go ahead and get started? We have Niki Conrad here with RPA Part 2. Thanks for you guys who joined us last week for RPA Part 1. I think we're going to pick up with item 8, if I remember correctly, Nikki. I'm not sure where you left off, but it should be that.
Yes.
We've also got Mindy Regan with us today, who's going to, is it Regan or Reagan? I don't know if I've ever asked.
It's Regan, R-E-G-A-N.
That's what I thought. So Regan joining us from MindHD, and she's going to go over a little bit about disclosure and whatnot, the initial part of that class, and then we'll get back into the contract. So go for it, ladies.
Mindy, are you starting off?
Sure, I can start.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mindy with my NHD Natural Hazard Disclosures, and it's good to see everybody this morning. Thank you for participating. My NHD is in partnership with CAR on your ZIP forms. It's not an accident that we're the first drop-down box on that RPA, which is your contract. So I want to share with you today the new Assembly Bill 38 that just came out January 1st of this year. It is to determine, is the home in a high fire or a very high fire severity zone? My NHD has been producing NHD reports since 1998. We use state, county, city maps to create our report, and we have been doing local disclosures on local maps forever since we've been in business. But it's a non-regulated industry and not all reports are written with local disclosures. So the new Assembly Bill is written to determine, is the seller selling a house that's in a very high fire or a very high fire severity zone? So I'm going to share my screen and show you the home hardening form that everybody needs to use for any home that is older than 2010. This is provided by CAR. This is the new form, HHDA. And all you have to do, if you're the listing agent representing the seller, is to provide this report to them if they're in a high fire or very high fire severity zone. And then they fill it out and they have to check off, is their home basically secure with roof covers that are fire retardant? Or do they have combustible landscaping that's too close? Or did they clear it with 6, 8, 12 feet of clearance? That's usually determined by the fire department. Do they have glass or non-tempered windows, single pane? These are the kind of things that the homeowner fills out. If they don't know the answers, they can't fill it out. And you, as the real estate agent, your fiduciary duty is to just produce the form. That way, when the buyer gets the NHD report and looks it over and sees that they are in a very high fire or very high fire severity zone, they know that they might need to get fire insurance. And this is something that's a big red flag right now, because some locations cannot get fire insurance and they have to go through the California FAIR Plan. So I just want to point that out, because nothing really has changed. We've always provided this local level. It's just that now this new assembly bill is requiring the other NHD companies that have not been doing local disclosures to basically bring their report up to that certain basic standard. What's unfortunate is that we have already started doing our own research at MyNHD, and we've already disclosed or discovered that there are a few companies out there that are saying they are at AB 38 compliant, and they're still not doing local disclosures. So what does that mean? It means that the state or county can say you're not in a very high fire zone, but the local map says you are, like say a Signal Hill map says you are, then that will supersede state and county. And if that's not correct, then the whole report of fire, very high fire, is wrong. And if your report is not accurate, that's where there's problems. So MyNHD is here to keep you safe and protected. We've had 0 issues on our reports since 1998. That means no lawsuits ever. So our $10 million of E&O protects you, listing agent, buyer's agent, buyer seller, transaction coordinator if you use one. So we keep you safe and protected, Nikki, and your escrow officer. So everyone in the transaction is protected. We show you that in our terms and conditions page on our report. And we have blue links and maps all over for the buyer to click on to gather information to ensure they're comfortable moving forward on the property. And the whole reason that this is so important is that Civil Code 1103.7 came out in 1998 to protect the buyer on the biggest purchase of their life and make sure that they are comfortable moving forward, because material fact is what affects the desirability and the value of the house. And that's why this was created. So I hope that helps. I can always answer questions. You can always call me. I will put my contact information in the chat. I know there's information in the office with my cards and information. And I will also show you real fast the new flyer. We actually, do you know if you already sent the flyer out, Nicholas, to agents?
I have not yet. I was saving it for the sales meeting next week.
Okay, cool. I'll just wait then. I'll be on the sales meeting. I'll show you that flyer as well. It's basically everything I just talked about. So thank you for having me. Are there any questions? Okay, if there are, I'm always available, and I'll put my information in the chat. So have a good class. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Nicholas. And
You're
I will
welcome.
see you guys at your office meeting next Wednesday.
All right.
So have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mindy. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
All right, Miss Nikki, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I hope you all are doing all right and maybe possibly had a chance to read the RPA since last week. If not, we're going to start at number 8, items included and excluded from the sale. Items listed as included or excluded in the MLS, flyers, or marketing materials are not included in the purchase price or excluded from the sale unless specified in this contract. We need to remember that the MLS is a marketing material. It's not a contract. Unless you put the things you want into the contract, they don't convey with the close of escrow. Okay. except as otherwise specified or disclosed, all existing fixtures and fittings that are attached to the property. Existing electrical, mechanical, lighting, plumbing, heating, ceiling fans, fireplace, gas logs, grates, solar power systems, built-in appliances, windows, door screens. This paragraph details a whole bunch of things, but what I wanted to point out is window coverings. This means curtains. So those sellers that have matching sofas and curtains or bedspreads and curtains, the window coverings are included. And believe it or not, I have had this come up negatively in quite a few transactions. So you need to remember, guys, that window coverings convey with the property. Seller does not get to take them with them.
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, I just had that happen. You're so right. In fact, the other agent didn't know. And I remember the first class you saying so. And I said, read your contract.
Yep. It does come up. I don't know why, but it always comes up. Okay. Alarm systems go with water features, fountains. If it's attached to the property, then it goes with the property. It also includes one of the ones that I've had bite me, or not me, but bite us in the transaction, trees and shrubs. You don't get to take your favorite fruit tree with you when you move if it's planted in the ground. I had a time where the buyer counted all the fruit trees and the seller took 4 of them, and he had to bring them back or provide the buyer with new ones. So these are important things. Stove, refrigerators, and washer dryers are not included unless these boxes are checked. Okay, so if your client wants them, check these boxes.
I have a quick question, sorry. If indeed we check those, just to double check, and they leave a refrigerator, stove, etc., they all have to be in working condition, correct?
Yes, they have to be in working condition, and they need to be the exact same ones you saw in the property when you made the offer. So if it's like a brand new GE refrigerator, and then when you close escrow, it's a, I don't know, Home Depot special, that's not the way it goes. You need to get the refrigerator, stove, washer, and dryer that were in the property when you made the offer. They can't warranty it. I mean, if 6 months down the line it breaks, it breaks. But you can add these items that you get from the seller to your home warranty. So that is a good thing. And remember, you want to put the buyer's choice of options, so that way you could add these. Okay. Following additional items you can add to this line right here, number 3. The only problem with that is if you add items and you are getting a loan, more than likely at some point you will have to do an addendum removing those items or saying that those items have no monetary value. The lender lends money on the home, not on items that go in the home. They don't lend money on furniture. Okay, just a thing to remember. In existing integrated phone, home automation systems, necessary components such as internet and internet connected hardware devices, control units, other than non-dedicated mobile devices, electronics and computers, and applicable software, permissions, passwords, codes, and access information are, that's the default, included in the sale. If you don't want it included in the sale, you need to either check are not, or you need to put it in the counteroffer. Okay. Any questions?
I do have one question, Nikki.
Sure.
Not really related to necessarily the items per se. Let's say you, situation I'm in right now, their carpet where the carpet where we're, the condo that we're writing an offer on, or that we have, excuse me, has terrible carpet. If I want the carpet clean, let's just say, is there somewhere I can write that?
You could put it in the contract, but you'd probably be better off putting it on a request for repair.
Thank you.
Okay. Just want to point out really quick that last paragraph, it sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, but what it's talking about mainly is smart homes. If they have a last listing I had, they had, I think it was Alexa, and the lock on the door was Alexa, and the cameras in the house were Alexa, and those items all conveyed with the property. If that clears up that little paragraph right there. Okay, leased or liened items. Sellers shall, within the time specified in 14A, disclose to the buyer if any items or systems specified in 8B or otherwise included in the sale is leased or not owned by the seller or specifically subject to a lien or encumbrance. And they shall deliver to the buyer all written materials, such as the lease, warranty, etc., concerning such an item. Please, 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 if you look at a house with your buyers and there are solar panels on it, you need to ask right away if those are leased or owned. And you need to make sure you're on top of getting all those documents. If it is leased, you're going to have to, your buyer usually has to qualify as to whether or not they can afford those lease payments. And this can take a good 2 weeks to do. So if you don't have those documents in the beginning, it can really hold up a sale. I haven't had many times where a buyer has been turned down, but I have had a couple times where they have been turned down. If the seller owns them, hallelujah, that's wonderful. But if they don't, make sure you get all of those documents up front. And if you're a listing agent, I just had a listing with solar, and I put all of the solar documents as supplements in the MLS. I wanted that stuff known from the get-go. Okay, buyer's ability to assume any such lease or willingness to accept the property subject to any such lien or encumbrance is a contingency in favor of buyer and seller as specified in 14B or C. So if the buyer didn't want to do the lease because they don't like the terms, they can get out of the contract. If they don't get approved, they can get out of the contract. That's why you want that information as soon as possible. Seller represents that they own all the items that are being conveyed in the sale, and that they shall transfer free and clear of liens and encumbrances except the items and systems identified in the lease or liened items. Any questions about solar? Nope. Oh, it looks like I have a couple questions. Oh, somebody has a great carpet cleaning. Okay. Yes, water softening units convey with the property as well. Items excluded from sale. Unless otherwise specified, the following items are excluded from the sale. Audio and video components, such as flat screen TVs, speakers, and other items. If any such item is not attached to the property, even if a bracket or other mechanism attached to the component or item is attached to the property, furniture and other items secured to the property for earthquakes purposes. Okay, so audio and video components do not convey with the property. But, and I've highlighted these things, brackets attached to walls, floors, or ceilings for any such component, furniture, or item shall remain on the property, or will be removed, and holes or other damage shall be repaired but not painted. So remember that if the seller has things that are bracketed to the wall, the brackets stay with the property unless you've checked that you want them removed, and the holes shall be repaired but not painted. Okay, that covers the included and excluded from sale. And I know it sounds silly, but escrow companies, if it's not covered here, then you don't get it. So make sure you're always put it in the contract. Put it in the contract. Okay, closing and possession. Buyer intends or does not intend to occupy the property as their primary residence. This is a lender item. If your buyer is not going to use the property as their primary residence, they need to state it. It can be considered lender fraud if you don't. Seller occupied or vacant property. Possession shall be delivered to the buyer at 6 p.m. All the time I hear about buyer's agents that are like, oh, it's noon. Do I get the keys? No, you don't get the keys. Number one, you don't get the keys until the property records at the county recorder, and the contract says you don't get it till 6 p.m. That's the default. You can change it to a different time, but it's 6 p.m. on the day of close of escrow. Okay. If you are going to give the seller 3 days or 2 days or however long, right here, no later than, I'll just go with 3 calendar days after close of escrow, make sure you click at and put in a time. If you don't put in a time, it conveys at 11:59 p.m. That's the end of the day according to the contract. So if you say 3 calendar days and you don't put in a time, your buyer can't get that house at noon. Your buyer gets the house at 11:59 p.m. and you don't want to have that problem. I've had it a couple times and it's not fun. Okay, questions? All right, then we will move on. Seller remaining in possession after close of escrow. Seller has the right to remain in possession if the parties are advised to sign a separate occupancy agreement. The CAR form seller in possession is for continued occupancy less than 30 days. If you're going to go more than 30 days, then you need to use the residential lease after sale. Okay. Parties are advised to consult with their insurance and legal advisors. Definitely insurance. The seller's homeowner insurance does not continue once they no longer own the property. They need to have renter's insurance. I want to say that again. A lot of people think that the seller doesn't have to change that insurance, but they do because they don't own it anymore. Okay. And the buyer is advised to consult with their lender about the impact of seller's occupancy on the loan. This is important. You guys really, really need to be in continuous conversations with the lender and make sure that they get a copy of this agreement as soon as possible. And you need to talk about the impact of things like this. I can't stress how important that is. You never want to be surprised the week before closing about stuff from the lender. Okay, tenant occupied property. Property shall be vacant at least 5 days prior to close of escrow unless otherwise agreed to in writing. Did everybody on this phone call know that the property is supposed to be vacant 5 days before the close of escrow? It's in the contract. So I think in the last 6 months, I've had at least 3 deals where the seller was still packing the day of close of escrow. Another thing you need to keep watch if you are a listing agent is that seller is actually packing and working on getting out of the house. Note to seller, if you are unable to deliver, yeah.
Nikki, I'm sorry, that number D was talking about the tenant occupied, not
Yeah,
the
sorry.
seller.
Sorry. Tenant occupied. Yeah, sorry. If you are unable to deliver the property vacant in accordance with rent control and other applicable law, you may be in breach of this agreement. So sorry, that is tenant, but note that it defaults. There's a tenant in the property, the contract automatically states that they have to be out of the property. That one has bitten quite a few people in the rear area. They thought that it automatically conveyed vacant, and it doesn't. It does, but they wanted the tenant to stay in. If you want the tenant to stay in the property, you have to actually check tenant to remain in possession. Okay, sorry if I confused you. Defaults, tenant is out of the property 5 days before close of escrow. You have to check a box if the tenant will remain in the property.
Nikki, I have a question. What if you
Sure.
don't know if they're going to remain? And what I mean by that is if you have a, what do you call it? You have one of those forms, you and I discussed it last week, the RP, what is that form? You know, when they're looking for their home, it's a contingency. So you're not sure if they're going to find a home or not. Do you follow? Go ahead.
For the seller, if the seller is
Yeah.
going to stay in the property.
Is this kind of like, I just want to know what boxes I'd be checking like from the get-go, because we're not sure yet, right? It's kind of weird.
You're right. What I would usually do in that case, I don't recommend doing the seller in possession or the residential lease after sale at the beginning
Okay.
in this first contract. What I recommend, if you represent the seller, is just putting in the counteroffer. Seller reserves the right to rent back the property for up to 30 days.
And then what if you're
And-
the buyer? What do you do? Because you want to make sure you're also, not to go back, but a little bit about like the insurance and all of that. We don't even know yet. So do you see where I'm kind of like, how do I proceed?
Right. So if you represent the buyer and you've talked to the listing agent and the seller hasn't found a property, then I would put in other terms. Seller may rent back the property. Buyer and seller agree, seller to rent back the property for up to 30 days after close of escrow.
But don't fill out any of this other stuff because we don't know yet. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Right. Just know that if it's under 30 days, seller in possession, over 30 days, residential lease after sale.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, at close of escrow, seller assigns to buyer any assignable warranty rights for items included in the sale, and seller shall deliver to buyer any available copies of warranties. At close of escrow, unless otherwise agreed to in writing, seller shall provide keys, passwords, codes that are meant to operate all the locks, mailboxes, security systems, alarms, home automated systems, internet devices included in the purchase price, and garage door openers. This means even in the case of seller staying in the property, you have to give keys to the buyer at the close of escrow. Okay. Seller doesn't get to stay and not provide keys to the owner of the house. I've had that argument come up a couple times, but just remember it's written in the contract. Seller shall provide keys at close of escrow. If the property is a condominium, the buyer may need to pay a deposit to get keys to HOA facilities. At my condo, the pool room key is not conveyed with the condo. You have to then pay $50 to get the pool room key. Sounds dumb, but it does happen. Okay, any questions? Ooh, sorry, you had people living in my house storing things weeks after the close of escrow. Gosh, That's horrible. Not good. If they didn't have a rental agreement, you could have just, I guess you could have, I don't know what you could do. You could put their stuff outside and tell them to come and get it. No, I'm just kidding. Check with the broker if that ever happens. They don't have the right to stay in unless they you agreed to it beforehand. Statutory disclosures and statutory and other disclosures, including lead-based paint, hazard disclosures, and cancellation rights. So this is a good little section right here. 14A is the part of the contract that talks about buyer's investigation. It's all the way over here. It defaults that seller has 7 days. Okay. Seller shall, within the time specified, 7 days, deliver to buyer a fully completed lead-based paint disclosure and the pamphlet, unless exempt, fully completed disclosures or notices required by sections 1102 and 1103 of the Civil Code. Statutory disclosures means state required disclosures. You can't get around giving these disclosures. You have to do it. Statutory disclosures include the real estate transfer disclosure statement, the NHD disclosure statement. Okay, we don't give the car form NHD disclosure statement anymore. We give the natural hazard report. Notice or actual knowledge of release of illegal controlled substances, notice of special tax and or assessments. Illegal controlled substances are covered in the seller property questionnaire. Special tax or assessments are included in the natural hazard report. Mellorews are also included in the natural hazard report and Improvement Bond Act. And if seller has actual knowledge of industrial use and military ordnance locations, that's included on the SPQ or the exempt seller disclosure. Any statutory disclosure required by this paragraph is considered fully completed if seller has answered all questions, and this sounds silly, and completed and signed the seller sections. So I know I talked about this last week or the week before in my disclosure class. If your seller does not sign and initial every spot, does not answer all questions, even and sometimes date them, other brokerages, other TCs can send those disclosures back to you and wait for you to bring them back, and that extends the time that they get to review them. The other thing that has to be fully completed is the seller's agent's portions. Seller's agent, if any, has completed and signed the seller's brokerage firm sections, or if applicable, an agent visual inspection disclosure. Guys, AVIDs are due in the 7-day period. They're not due at the end. They're not due at the end of the 17 days. Your AVID is due 7 days into this contract if you are a listing agent. Okay, nothing stated herein relieves a buyer's brokerage firm of, if any, from obligation to conduct a reasonably competent and diligent visual inspection of the accessible areas of the property and disclose on Section 4 of the TDS or an AVID material facts affecting the value or desirability of the property that were or should have been revealed by such an inspection. Complete any sections on all disclosures required to be completed by a buyer's brokerage firm. Okay. Note to buyer and seller, waiver of statutory and lead disclosures is prohibited by law. Don't let flippers tell you that they aren't required to fill out the TDS or SPQ. They are. Okay, I'm just gonna look at chats really quick. I don't see it's, okay, we're good on that. Any questions?
One question, Nikki.
Okay.
In regards to these disclosures, if the seller does not provide them, let's say you have 7 days. So let's say they provide them on the 8th day. Doesn't that mean you have 5 additional days to review?
Yes, you have 5 additional days. So on day 8,
Mhm.
if you haven't shortened your investigation period for the buyer, you're still okay. But if you put 10 days for investigation period and they give you them on day 8, the day you receive them, you have 5 days to review them, and the buyer can cancel for whatever reason if they don't like what's in those disclosures. Even if this doesn't happen often, but it's happening more because so many people are making offers. I've had people remove the buyer investigation contingency, and they can do that, but they still have 5 days to review disclosures and can cancel for anything in those disclosures.
You mean if
So
like
even-
they didn't get them to them? Is that what you mean? Sorry.
Yeah, if they don't get them in time, or if they remove, for whatever reason, they remove the buyer investigation and they haven't received everything. I see a lot of people where the buyer removes their investigation and the listing agent has not given their AVID. If those cases, when that buyer receives that AVID, they have 5 days to review and they can cancel for anything in that AVID, even if the buyer investigation contingency has been removed. And that's discussed, I think in paragraph 14 as well, right there. Buyer has 5 days after delivery of any such items, whichever is later, to deliver a removal of the contingency or a cancellation of this agreement. So if the contingency was removed, they still can cancel after review of anything. You guys got it?
Only
And
if
see
it was
how
late, just to clarify, only if it was late, right?
Right.
Disclosures, thank you.
Right, because if you're still in your investigation period, your buyer can cancel for any reason investigatively. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Within the time specified of 14A, unless the seller is exempt, they have to provide a TDS. And if they have to provide a TDS, they have to provide a seller property questionnaire. If the seller is not required to provide a TDS, if they are exempt, which would be a probate or a successor trustee selling the property, the seller will complete and provide the buyer with an exempt seller disclosure. Okay. Buyer shall, within the time specified in paragraph 14B, return signed copies of the statutory lead and other disclosures to the seller. It's written in the contract, guys, that you have to return those disclosures to the listing agent and the seller in the time of the investigation period. So hopefully nobody's waiting until the end to return disclosures to the buyer's agent or the seller's agent. Either way. In the event seller or seller's brokerage firm, prior to close of escrow, becomes aware of adverse conditions materially affecting the property or material inaccuracy in the disclosures, information or representations previously provided to the buyer, sellers shall promptly provide a subsequent or amended disclosure or notice in writing covering these items. So I had a property once where we gave all the disclosures, buyer removed their investigation, and then there was a horrific leak in the property. The seller had to do an addendum to the SPQ stating what happened. Of course, everything was fixed, but after receiving that addendum, the buyer had 5 days to review and decide whether they wanted to move forward. In that case, they did move forward. And most of the times I've had people move forward as long as they are given that information. An amendment disclosure is not required. So this is important for conditions and material inaccuracies of which the buyer is aware. So if your seller fills out the TDS or the SPQ to the best of their knowledge, and something comes up on the property inspection that they did not know about, you do not need to amend the TDS or the SPQ, because the buyer, all parties are aware of what happened or what came about in that property inspection. Okay, so subsequent or amended disclosure is not required in which it's disclosed in reports provided to or obtained by the buyer or ordered and paid for by the buyer. Questions? Okay. Don't be hesitant to ask me any questions, please. I love questions. I love it when Christy's in my class. She always asks really good questions. Okay. If any disclosure or notice specified in paragraph 10A or subsequent or amended disclosure or notice is delivered to buyer after the offer is signed, buyer shall have the right to cancel this agreement within 3 days after delivery in person. So if you give them your AVID in person, they have 3 days to review. If you email it, 5 days. Or if you send it in the mail, giving written notice of cancellation to sellers or seller's agent. So that's what I was talking about. If you give them your AVID after the contingency is removed, or if you give them TDS or anything after the 17 days. Natural and environmental hazard disclosures and other booklets. Within the time specified in paragraph 14A, which is 7 days, seller shall, if required by law, deliver to buyer earthquake guides and questionnaire, environmental hazards booklet, home energy rating pamphlet. Disclose if the property is located in a special flood hazard area, potential flooding area, a very high fire hazard zone. That was what Mindy was talking about at the beginning of this class. State fire responsibility area, earthquake fault zone, and seismic hazard zone. And disclose any other zones as required by law and provide any other information required for those zones. So when you get your natural hazard report nowadays, there's a link to a bunch of hazard booklets. And these are all the booklets it's discussing right here. They're also available if you go into form libraries and click California, the EPUB dues right here. These are all those booklets. So you can download them and send them to your client. Just a quick note, I recently had a property that was in a state fire responsibility area, not a very high fire hazard zone. And the buyer is having a very hard time finding insurance. So just because it doesn't say very high fire hazard zone, you need to really pay attention to what else those natural hazard reports say. Okay. Within the time specified in 14A, which is 7 days, to avoid required withholding, seller shall deliver to buyer or qualified substitute an affidavit sufficient to comply with federal, RPA, and California withholding law. So the seller shall deliver a seller's affidavit of non-foreign status or a qualified substitute. The affidavit of non-foreign status is supposed to have the seller's tax ID number or the corporation's tax ID number. Nobody wants to give that, so the sellers give that information to escrow, and escrow will sign a QS, which you give to the buyer. Okay, Megan's Law database disclosure. Pursuant to section 290.46 of the Penal Code, information about specified registered sex offenders is made available to the public via an internet website maintained by the Department of Justice at meganslaw.com. Okay, this part of the contract discloses that information. You don't need to provide a Megan's Law database disclosure. Neither seller nor brokers are required to check this website. If buyer wants further information, broker recommends that the buyer obtain information from this website during their investigation contingency period. You don't want to know. If you know, you have to disclose. If it's hearsay, you could get in trouble for disclosing it. So this is all we want the buyers to know, and the buyer needs to investigate on their own. Okay. I wanted to look something up really quick. What is this? This is E. Okay, this paragraph right here regarding gas and hazardous liquid transmission pipelines, it's required by law. The website it references allows the buyer to look up the distance from the property to gas or hazardous liquid pipelines, since this may be a concern in case of a leak or explosion. That is where all the buyers can go to find out this information. If you include the environmental portion, which in the natural hazard report, which Coldwell Banker Coastal Alliance wants you to do, it also explains that stuff. Any questions? All right, moving on. Condominium plan development disclosures. Seller has 7 days after acceptance to disclose to buyer if the property is a condominium or is located in a planned development or other common interest subdivision. That's on the seller property questionnaire and the exempt seller disclosure. So once again, 7 days to provide it. Seller has 3 days after acceptance to request the HOA documents. Okay, so that means seller has 3 days to give the information to escrow to contact the HOA, and then seller to pay for the HOA documents. All HOA documents, well, I don't want to say all, majority of HOA companies, HOA docs are an upfront fee. You would help yourself a lot if you find out before the listing goes live how much the seller is going to have to pay for HOA docs, because they can be, I've seen them as much as $1,000, and I've seen them as little as $250. So just make sure you know that, and that the seller knows that they have to pay for those upfront. Okay, included in HOA documents are disclosures of any pending or anticipated claim or litigation, a statement containing the location and number of designated parking and storage spaces, copies of the most recent 12 months of HOA minutes for regular and special meetings, names and contact information of the HOAs governing the property, private transfer fees, pet fee restrictions, smoking restrictions. Seller shall itemize and deliver to buyer all CI disclosures received from the HOA and any CI disclosures in seller's possession. Buyer's approval of disclosures is a contingency of this agreement as specified in 14B3. The parties specified in paragraph 7, as directed by escrow, shall deposit funds into escrow or direct to HOA company to pay for any of the above. So that was right up here. You want to check seller shall pay for HOA transfer fee. Seller shall pay for HOA fees pertaining to all documents other than those legally required. Okay. Condition of the property. It's 11:51. Whew. I'll try to get through this page. Okay, the property is sold in its as-is condition, right? All those people that write in the counteroffers, property is sold as is. You don't need to reiterate it. It's right here in the contract. Property is sold as in its present physical condition as of the date of acceptance and subject to buyer's investigation rights. The property, including pool, spa, landscaping, and grounds, is to be maintained in substantially the same conditions as on the date of acceptance. All debris and personal property not included in the sale shall be removed by close of escrow. So when you do a final walkthrough, one of the things you are looking for is that everything looks exactly the same as it did when you made the offer. All the landscaping taken care of. There's no new holes in the walls because the mover hit something or anything like that. Per the contract, it's in the exact same condition. Seller shall, within the time specified, disclose known material facts and defects affecting the property, including insurance claims within the past 5 years. Make any and all other disclosures required by law. This is a biggie, the insurance claims, because other insurance companies may not insure the property if there's certain kind of claims, okay?
Nikki, where is that disclosed, by the way? Sorry.
Insurance claims,
Yeah, where would that be? In the HOA docs or?
that is in the SPQ, I believe, and the TDS.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, the the lender, your buyer's lender, usually checks this out as well. Okay. Buyer has the right to conduct buyer investigations of the property as specified in paragraph 14 based upon information discovered in those investigations, cancel the agreement or request that the seller make repairs or take other action. Okay, buyer is strongly advised to conduct investigations of the property in order to determine its present condition. Seller may not be aware of all defects affecting the property or other factors that buyer considers important. Property improvements may not be built according to code, in compliance with current law, or have had permits issued. We all know there are properties out there that have been remodeled with no permits. If you've done any property inspections lately, you'll see that not up to code, not up to code, not up to code. If a remodel was done in 1989, it's probably not up to today's code, but it doesn't mean that it was done from the get-go shoddily. Just note that to your clients, because I think that's a little scary for them to hear that things aren't up to code. And yeah, that's all I have to say for that. Buyer investigation of property and matters affecting the property. This paragraph gives the buyer the right to inspect all aspects of the property, the inside and the outside, all the rooms, and to check out anything else of interest to the buyer. In most cases, if the buyer does not want to move forward with the sale, the buyer can cancel, but only if the buyer acts within the time allowed. That's the buyer investigation period. Every buyer should take advantage of this right to check out the property. Okay. They are a couple of the inspections you can do is a general physical inspection. a wood destroying pest inspection. Note if there's a detached structure, you need to make sure that you ask for, if you're going to ask for the seller to pay for a termite, or if your buyer is going to pay for termite, you need to ask for detached structures to be covered. They don't include water tests or shower pans on upper level units unless the owners of the property below the shower consent. Shall not include roof coverings. If the property is a unit in a condominium or other common interest subdivision, the inspection shall include only the separate interest and any exclusive areas being transferred. It shall not include common areas, which means walls in. Everything walls in would be inspected in a condo.
What about attics? Is that, I think I asked you this the other day. Some condos include attics, some do not. Is that just an HOA question?
If it has an attic, if it's within the walls that the seller owns, then it would be included.
Thank you.
Okay. Section base paint hazards. The buyer inspection advisory talks more detail about what the buyer can go over in their inspection period. You want them to satisfy themselves on any of the reports they've seen, reviewed register sex offender database, confirm the insurability of the property, including the availability of and cost of flood and fire insurance, because those can be kind of pricey. Review and seek approval of leases that may need to be assumed by buyer. Without seller's prior written consent, buyer shall neither make nor cause to be made invasive or destructive investigations. You can't cut holes in the walls unless the seller agrees to it. All right. Questions? Still doing good? Seller must allow the buyer into the property to conduct inspections, but only during the time allowed for inspections in the contract. Of course, an inspection won't mean much unless the utilities are on. This paragraph requires the seller to keep the utilities on, not just through the inspection period, but the entire inspection period. So that is C right here, B and C. Okay, 12D, having the right to inspect does not give the buyer the right to damage the seller's home. If the buyer or the buyer's workers do cause damage, the seller is entitled to be compensated. Okay, that is, you can do a form, notice of non-responsibility. It's a CLAR form if you want to. I don't see that hardly ever. Buyer's obligations under this paragraph shall survive the termination of this agreement. So if something happened and the buyer canceled, the seller still has right for compensation. Okay, title and vesting. How does the buyer know the seller really owns the property, or that no one else has the right to build on it, drill on it, or under it, park on it, drive across it, or use it in any way? There are public records that can tell all of that, or better yet, the buyer can obtain a title insurance policy effective on close of escrow. It's required. We covered that on page 3, when we said that sellers shall pay for title, owner's title insurance, and seller can choose or buyer can choose. Okay. But even before, the buyer will want to look at information from the title company to make the decision as to whether it is even worth it to buy based on issues that might show up. Okay, you can call any of your title reps and get a property profile for any property. They are really good about this. I do it all the time, definitely if I'm a listing agent, but you can do the same on when you're on the selling agent side. Okay. Went a little too far there. Got all excited. Just as the property improvements are being sold in as-is condition, so too is the title to the property taken in its present condition, with a few exceptions. Examples including things like easements, restrictions, and CC&Rs. For example, a neighbor may have an easement to use the property's driveway. However, if a bank or lender has recorded a lien on title to secure a loan, that lien needs to be removed. That is 13B. Monetary liens of record, seller is obligated to pay off unless buyer is assuming these obligations or taking the property subject to those obligations. Okay, seller has to disclose to the buyer all matters that affect title that the seller is aware of. And this is supposed to be done within 7 days. 14A always talks about 7 days, unless you lower it. At the close of escrow, buyers shall receive a grant deed conveying the title, or for stock co-op or long-term lease, an assignment of a stock certificate or the seller's leasehold interest, including oil, mineral, and water rights, if currently owned by the seller. Title shall vest as designated in the buyer's supplemental escrow instructions. The manner of taking title may have significant legal and tax consequences. Please ask your buyers to consult with their CPAs. Okay, properties, oil, mineral rights. If the seller does not, for sake, let me start this over. Title would be transferred to the buyer through a grant deed, including rights to property, oils, mineral, and water rights, if the seller currently owns them. A previous owner may have sold the oil rights to a gas or energy company years or decades earlier. The current owner may or may not be due royalty fees. If the seller doesn't have the mineral rights or water rights, then they don't convey with the property. The way buyers take title can make a big difference. The buyer can choose to take title solely, with a friend as joint tenant, or with a business partner as tenant in common, or a spouse as community property. How the buyer chooses to take title can have serious tax and legal consequences. Make sure to check with escrow, a tax consultant, or an attorney to make sure they're transferring title in a way that best suits their needs. They need to check with those people, not you guys as agents. All right, just a couple more. 13E, this CLTA/ALTA homeowners policy is the type of title insurance that is standard in the real estate industry and provides greater protection to the buyer than other types of title coverage. The buyer will get a homeowner's policy if it is available to them, depending upon the type of situation. Buyer shall choose, okay, title policies and if the homeowner's policy is not available, buyer shall choose another policy, instruct escrow holder in writing, and shall pay any increase in cost. Okay. As that, I think we'll stop there and we'll start with number 14 on page 6. Okay, let me see. If you are working on a mobile home sale and it has a separate storage shed, you should add it to the contract if your buyers want to keep it, unless it's like built into the property. Okay, sorry. Any other questions?
The last question, Nikki. Thank you for
Sure.
everything. It's been great. So a lot of times buyers have a supplemental tax. I learned right away to make sure to remind them that there most likely will be a supplemental tax. Can you remind me, my last transaction, I recall being able to get this information beforehand. Of course, I tell them that it's not a guarantee, but I kind of had an idea of what it was. I think I got that from title. Can you remind me where I probably saw that? The supplemental tax bill was somewhere. I feel like I saw it somewhere.
Supplemental tax bill information is in the NHC report. It includes what the current seller is paying.
Yes, that's what it was. Okay. The NHD.
But the buyer needs to know that that's based on the property value. And if the house is sold at a higher value, it will change.
It would be
But it might
reassessed
not
and
change
then, yeah,
yet.
I got you. Okay.
And they will get a supplement. Yeah.
Thank you. But NHD, that's where I was trying to remember where I saw it, because I like to kind of have an idea so I can tell. And sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, they will even get 2 supplemental tax bills. So, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? I know this is like the meat and potatoes of the contract. A lot of it is kind of boring to read, but it is important stuff. And most of the things that are included in this contract are things that have, it's information that people didn't know and may have brought to mediation or arbitration. So they try to detail it out as much as possible.
Niki?
Yes.
This is Elia. Hi.
Hi, Elia.
Hi. When the taxes are impounded, who is going to explain that to the buyers? Should the lender be explaining that to the buyers? Because we don't know how much that's going to go up every year, right? On the taxes.
Right.
So
Right.
that be addressed by the lender?
Yeah.
Or?
I would have them talk to the lender about that. ESCO can usually answer a couple questions about it, but the lender's a very good one to ask about that.
Okay, thank you.
Nikki, because they don't have a choice. They always have to have them impounded, or they don't. This is where I get a little confused about that.
They don't
have an
to.
option.
It is a choice.
It is a choice.
Except FHA, correct? I thought the FHA was automatic. They have no option, I thought.
I'm trying to think. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know that
conventional loan is an option, but FHA, I'm not sure about VA, but I thought FHA, they had no option because it's impounded.
I know my loan was FHA when I first got it, and I had already chosen to have my mine impounded. It's just easier for me that way. And now it's conventional, and they're still impounded. I like paying them that way, personally. But yeah, talk to the lender about that for sure. And I will check on that and let you all know for sure at the next class. I'm going to write it down. Okay, any other questions? All right, I wanted to show you guys really quick. Forms Tutor Advisor right here. This is a page that you can get to from your zip forms. If you go to Access Forms Tutor. Oh, darn it. Hold on. This right here, I clicked Access Forms Tutor. You can click this and send it to yourself. And what it will do is it's going to give you the, let's see, am I sharing this? Hold on, share. Okay, this is the whole contract right here. And it describes in layman's language what is being talked about in the purchase contract. This is a really, really cool tool. So that number 12A with this huge paragraph in the contract, they give you it in a much more, much easier way to understand in this paragraph on the side. So if you all wanted to email that to yourself, it's a really good tool. You can just click on that, those little hand pieces.
Is this printable, Nikki?
It's not printable, unfortunately.
It would be
because
cool.
it's kind of,
It's very long.
I know. I
Oh,
tried to, but if you go back to the very first page of it, where you just see the little fingers, you can just, if you have a problem, sorry, I'm trying to go back to the actual.
I emailed it to my clients.
Yeah, which is good. But if you ever have like a question and you're unsure of it, you can go to this contract and just click on the part where you're not sure of, and it'll give you a little example. So like say I wasn't sure of the time periods, I could just email this to myself and click on that, and it's going to pull up a little explanation. So it's good for your clients, but it's also good for you guys, especially if you're newer. I wish this was around when I first started, because it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to read than just the contract.
Mhm.
this is really cool. So you got this through the tutor. What was it called? I'm writing it down. Sorry.
Forms
Form
tutor.
Forms tutor. Thank you.
And
Nice.
then you make sure you don't do the advisor, because you can do the advisor. What that does is you put in all of the details of your transaction, and it'll recommend all the forms you need. You want the forms tutor. And then when you click on that, it'll take you to this page, and you just click here to share. Oh, I'm wrong. Sorry, you can't even see that. Share. So you just, this is it, and you click on that, and then email it to yourself. Okay. Any other questions? We all good? We all ready to eat lunch? Wake ourselves up. If there's nothing else,
Thank you, Nikki.
you're welcome. I'm going to end. And always, you know, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'm always here to answer anyone's questions.
Thanks
Thank you
again,
so
Nikki.
much.
Thank you so much. You're
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.